cannot believe I'm going on a trip to ancient Ghana. It's so exciting. I hear that on this tour, they show the daily lives of the ancient Ghana people and other interesting facts. I'm going to keep this diary with me as I discover the facts of this ancient empire. Off we go on Air Ghana. Wow, I cannot imagine having chiefs and clans for a government. I mean, compared to daily life right now with a cabinet or a dictator, it's just so hard to think that a government could only consist of semi-anonymous chiefs or clans. An example of this is the Ga people, who organize themselves into Wees, which are political groups that are based on the birth order or generational standing. But I guess it's not as different as I've stated it, because during the 800s, the kings required the rulers of provinces to obey his laws and make payments, which were called tributes. This makes me think of how we have taxes in the legislative branch during the current time, 2011. During my time with the Ga, I learned that patrilineal dominance was a main part of daily life and ritual authority. Not only was the king important, but priests and the council of elders were pertinent. Not as much, though. Their main job was to govern village rights. I can't believe that women were important. I mean, they took care of their family and the children. Where did I visit next? Oh, yeah, I remember. I went to Kumbi Sali, ancient Ghana's last capital. First thing I spotted was a mosque and many houses made of stone and cement with mud. I met a kind-hearted woman who allowed me into her house to have a quick drink of water before I moved on. I noticed that her walls were decorated with yellow plaster. As I was walking along, I noticed a river. I found a person fishing. When I walked up to them, they said there were two different rivers that surrounded Ghana, and I was looking at the Niger River. I then asked them what the second one was called, and they said Senegal River. Once I kept moving, I saw a little boy struggling to carry a basket. I offered to help, and he accepted. We kept a conversation going. I found out that there was gold in the country below them, and that they only got their money from their positioning being between the Muslim traders and gold. Geez, I thought to myself, they are so smart. They created a toll bridge in order to get money. After this trip, I realized that their social differentiation was only based on food, clothing, and jobs. For instance, the well-off would eat imported wheat, dates, beef, dried figs, and more. Also, they would wear cotton or woven cloths with decorations, maybe even jewelry, whereas the lower classes would eat millet dura into griddle cakes and wear woolen or animal skins. An example of someone with a low-income job would be a slave. A person who was well-off would probably be an official. I bet it was nice being well-off, but I guess I too would be categorized in a lower class too. The king was first in rank, whereas the priests or council of elders were second in rank. Although it is true they had chieftaincies in clan-based states, they still respected the ruler or king, known as Tunka. They would still pay tributes or taxes to the king and obey his laws. When I was taking a break from my journey, I saw sitting under a tree a man and three kids. As I approached them, I heard him speaking about a hero and magician named Dinga and his warrior son, Diab. I've always loved stories, and I wanted to sit down and listen to this animated man telling the story. After he finished the story, I decided to ask him what it was about. I learned that Dinga and Diab were founders of Ghana and led the people that were named Ouagadougou through series of conquests and migrations. I also happened to meet up with an ethnic group named Ga. As I was walking into their village, a little girl came up to me and greeted me. She asked where I had come from as a result of my different clothing and said that I looked lost. I explained my situation to her and she decided to help. While we were exiting the village, she talked about the migrations that had started in the 1200s, or when they settled in the Accra Plains, Gigbe, Little Accra, and Lolabo. These migrations were both land and sea and were told in myths. We kept on talking, and in the process we passed by an open pavilion. Before I could ask her what it was, she started to tell me about it. She mentioned that the king would sit in the pavilion surrounded by the princes, pages, and horses. While he was sitting, villagers would kneel and dust would be poured over their heads as they were expressing their complaints. Also, out of respect, foreigners would clap their hands. Before we parted, she said that the king lived separately from the citizens, and he would sometimes force the villagers to perform raids. While in their capital, I talked to a chief who explained things about their religion. As he explained this, he mentioned ceremonies that were used to calm the spirits of the skies, earth, and waters. This was used to ensure rainfall and that the crops will grow and the rivers will produce protein-filled fish. It was also used to make kumbi sali accepted by the creature representing the earth. As I kept walking through the area, I saw an elderly woman who was part of the Ga weeding her garden. She looked lonely, so I skipped towards her. I greeted her and asked what the rest of her family does. She said that her sons were gold miners and told me a secret that Ghana did not possess actual gold, but the country below them, which was Bambuk, had it. So her sons and other miners, along with Muslim traders, formed a link between the two countries, and they were the ones who brought the gold. Also, the Saniki people would regulate the amount of gold so they could have all the wealth. I then asked her how they would gain money by just regulating it being a link between the Bambuk and the Muslim traders. Her response to my question was that the king would force traders to pay taxes so they may enter the area, Ghana. The taxes were paid in dinars, which was an eighth of an ounce of gold. For example, each load of salt that entered Ghana was 1 dinar. In order to export it, it would cost 2 dinars. I spent a few more minutes with this elderly woman. She explained that she had a daughter who had moved away recently, and that was the reason why she was lonely. Furthermore, her daughter had already started a family and looked after her children, while her husband tilled the farmland. They would grow yams, oil palms, and plantains. Before I left, the old woman wished me well on my journey. I thanked her, and I was back on my way. My dress was flowing through the wind as I ran along the trail, but something caught my attention. It was Muslim traders in caravans. They seemed to be heading out of town with a boatload of books, salts, textiles, and tools. I really wanted to speak with them, so I raised my hand up and they stopped. I asked if they were enjoying their jobs and what they were going to trade for those items or goods. They replied that they wanted to trade for gold, ivory, and slaves, and said that the exchange that goes around there was intra-regional and inter-regional. As I was speaking to the Muslim traders, they mentioned that not only was gold imported, but so was salt. Salt was a very important component of the people's diets. Goodness, I never thought that salt could be so important. I mean, we just buy salt in grocery stores, and it's so easy to access. I learned that sorghum, rice, animal meat, and groundnuts were cultivated in Ghana. Amazing! I never heard of sorghum before. I guess I could try it later. Within these 20 days, I've learned so much. I cannot believe that my trip is coming to an end. I think this trip was worth my time, and I cannot wait until I go on another. But for now, 再见, goodbye!